Ladies and gentlemen, this past weekend we had a lot of great panels. Um, Battlefront 2 was announced. We remembered Carrie Fisher. We celebrated 40 years of Star Wars. We've laughed, we cried, we clinked drinks. We did what us Star Wars people do. But nothing was as big as the Last Jedi panel. Friday at 11 a.m., Ryan Johnson, the director, the writer, Kathleen Kennedy, the president of Lucasfilm, um, hey, Sam Grizzle, um, and other various members of the cast, and I'll get to who they were, don't worry, sat down and finally revealed some information about Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. The final, the second chapter in this new trilogy, starting with The Force Awakens and ending with Episode 9. We have been waiting for this since The Force Awakens ended, since they announced that The Last Jedi was the subtitle for this Star Wars film. We, the fans, have been waiting for this. And again, Josh Gad, who plays Olaf, and he was in Book of Mormon. He was also in The Wedding Ringer, and he's mostly known as Olaf, and he just played LeFou in the live action Beauty and the Beast. He hosted this panel, rightfully so, because for the past couple weeks he's been working on set with Miss Daisy Ridley, Rey, from this trilogy. And he's been asking her, who is the Last Jedi? And then he was able to get, all these other actors and actresses and co-workers of hers to come in and ask her all these questions about The Last Jedi, including J.J. Abrams, the director and writer of Force Awakens himself, wanted to know one simple thing. Will Luke speak in The Last Jedi? And that's something we all want to know. So please tell us. Please. But all was teased in this panel. I don't want to say things were answered because, quite frankly, nothing was answered. Things were teased. But we actually did get to see the first tangible footage of a teaser trailer, 2 minutes and 13 seconds long, of The Last Jedi. But it didn't start that way. No, of course it didn't start that way. It started with Ryan Johnson, the director and writer, getting praised by Kathleen Kennedy for making a masterful film. Kathleen has seen it already. So has Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney. They've seen it already, or a cut of it. And it was great. It was just, it was crazy. Ryan Johnson took pictures from his point of view of things on set, and they showed some of the pictures, and we might see a scene of Finn in what appeared to be a trench coat with sitting opposite Gwendolyn Christie, who plays Captain Phasma, the silver stormtrooper from the First Order. We saw a couple pictures of the late Carrie Fisher. Some amazing pictures of Poe, played by Oscar Isaac, Rey, played by Daisy Ridley, Finn's played by John Boyega. Some great pictures. It was great. It was great teaser for the teaser to see these pictures and to see this come from the eyes of the director. Because, the whole movie's from the eyes of the director. But I was really keep movie stars out of Star Wars. Star Wars episode, the original Star Wars did not have any majorly famous people. I mean, yes, it did, but they got mostly no names in there, which was part of the chemistry that really helped the original series. And it kind of hindered the prequel series because they got Natalie Portman, who was the hot thing that, at the time. Hayden Christensen, again, who was the hot thing at the time. And Samuel L. Jackson was in it, and Ewan McGregor, that was one of the things that wasn't quite up to par with the original series. But now again with this new series, you get Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, coming in to rejoin and to join with this legacy cast of Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill. So we then are introduced to some of the other cast members. Now, the stage did not have a huge amount of seats on it, so it looked as if we were going to get a smaller, more intimate crowd of actors and actresses or crew members for this panel, which, it's great, but at the same time, you can understand they're doing it because I don't think they wanted to completely blow their cover or give too much away by having, the whole cast on there like they did for Force Awakens. And it was this is the second movie that this cast is doing, so you know the cast members. You've seen them at the cons, or you've seen them do the press tour when Force Awakens comes out. So there weren't too many seats on there, but you do realize that who they chose to have on this panel in particular were there with purpose and with a sense of why these people are there. And the first person to come out was the heroine of the storyline that we've found out so far, Daisy Ridley, who plays Rey herself. She came out, and Josh said, "Listen, you could try to get around, ask my questions. However, you not only have to answer my questions, you have to answer the fans' questions. Because I may be nice and let it slide." And let your agreement with Lucasfilm stay, but these fans are the reason why you're back here. So you might want to think twice about not giving anything away. And she smiled, and she's got that huge, great, beautiful smile. And she looked over at Kathleen Kennedy, and she sat there and said, and I quote, "Rey has a certain expectation as to what she might be getting from Luke, and what that might entail. And as a lot of people know, it's quite difficult when you meet your heroes because it might not be what you expect." And direct quote from Daisy Ridley herself. And that was it. It was scripted, and it was so beautiful. And it kind of brings up the question, what is going on in The Last Jedi? We've already been told from candid interviews with Adam Driver and Rian Johnson, I think Kathleen Kennedy said it too, this film will be much darker than that of Force Awakens. In fact, it might even be darker than Empire Strikes Back. And that's a pretty dark Star Wars film. So to have her say this was pretty telling without seeing any footage and only seeing stills that Rian Johnson had released. So from there, we were introduced to John Boyega, who plays Finn, and asked what's going on with Finn. Again, he looks over at Kathleen Kennedy, and she gives him the approval, and he sits there and he again says something that seems scripted, and he sits there and says, well, Finn is going to be recovering from his physical and emotional scars from that of Force Awakens, and we know the physical scars that that were given to him by Kylo Ren at the end of Force Awakens, But now John said Finn has to decide whether he wants to run from the First Order or join the Resistance. And I mean, it kind of sounds like the same thing, but it really isn't. Finn, Finn was a conflicted character from the very beginning that we met him. I mean, we saw, he had told Poe that he went into his first battle on Jakku, and he just realized that he was not meant to be there. And he wants to do good. He wants to take all that training and possible brainwashing that the First Order was doing to its recruits, and they wanted to, he wanted to get it out of his system and, act as if karma had a thing. If I do good, good things will come to me. Well, in doing so, he was marked a traitor, and thus, believing that he might be one with the Force, tries to go up against Kylo Ren, who's much stronger with him, much more in tuned in the Force than Finn was, and thus suffered some, what seemed to be life-threatening injuries. So running from the First Order would mean that he has nothing to do with the Resistance. However, the First Order knows he's with the Resistance, so if he were to be found at some, depth somewhere in the galaxy, and the First Order were to find him, they just think that he's Resistance. However, if Resistance sees him, they might think that he's a spy for the First Order, and thus going out, and, so he's stuck between that, that cycle of, what do I do? He's in that kind of crisis of character, deciding whether or not he wants to be part of the Resistance, or if he just wants to spend his life on the run from the First Order, hoping the Resistance will take care of it without his help. So it seems very interesting. It seems very interesting. When we discuss the actual trailer in a little bit, there you do see Finn, and where you see him, it's telling but not very telling. So that was John Boyega's thing. And then we were introduced to a new character. Kelly Marie Tran is playing Rose, a mechanic for the Resistance. And Rian Johnson and Kathleen Kennedy both sat there and said, this Rose character is going to be central to the story of The Last Jedi. Whoa. Are you okay? All right. Okay. Who are you and what are you doing? Well, I mean, Rose couldn't give much up of her storyline, or Kelly couldn't give up much of Rose's storyline, other than the fact that she is a mechanic, and we've seen the mechanic storyline done before in Star Wars, both in Rebels and in the Darth Vader comic series. Dr. Afrin becomes Darth Vader's sort of hidden apprentice, doing side missions to try to figure out who blew up the Death Star in the Darth Vader Marvel comic series that came out in 2015 and 16. Definitely check those out. It's a great comic line, story system. So Rose seems to be, now she's part of the Resistance, and mechanics in the Resistance sounds like it's a great storyline to be a part of, because I think we're going to get to see some cool new ships and, some of that different thinking like we saw from Rey in Force Awakens, where she just pulls out a contraption, shows it to Han Solo, and says, I bypassed the compressor. And, is able to get the Millennium Falcon out from releasing a deadly gas that might kill her and Finn, to nearly trying to release it and almost killing Han Solo, Chewie, her, and Finn. So, this whole mechanic feeling looks as if it's going to be a great storyline. And the thing is, yes, I can see the chat. The thing of this is that a mechanic would be, have great access to the fight other than that of a fighter, and everything like that. Um, Ben and Andrew, cool, awesome. Um, so this is, it's a new character, and again, there weren't a lot of seats on this panel, so that kind of just tells you that, each person that was introduced, and brought out, I mean, other than Kathleen Kennedy and Rian Johnson, but again, he's the director and writer of the movie, so he's one of the most important figures of this movie. But each of the people that were brought out had a major, major role in this movie. And then the last seat was filled by none other than Luke Skywalker himself, Mark Hamill. And Kathleen Kennedy, I mean, Mark was joking and you know, doing his usual jokester kind of thing. You would almost think that he was the trickster. He was channeling his version of the Joker, if you would. And he was, telling little quips here and quips there and stuff like that. And, hopefully I'll be able to speak. I mean, I did speak in a lot in The Last Jedi, so hopefully they use some of that footage. I mean, I did speak in The Force Awakens. However, it didn't make it past the cutting room floor. So I don't know. And even when they were about to reveal the trailer, he sat there. He's like, well, I hope I have lines because I know I taped something for it. But, he hasn't seen the trailer prior to this panel. So it was great to see him. And there was actually one point where he was trying to acknowledge all the people on set. And he sat there. He's like, I'm here with all these great actors, actresses, directors, and the president. And I'm here with Olaf. And he pointed to Josh Gad. And he's Wonder Woman. He pointed to Kathleen Kennedy. God. And he pointed to Rian Johnson. Joking around that Rian was his God like father figure, helping him, with the taping of this movie, making sure that Luke Skywalker is done right. And then he sits there and he looks at Daisy Ridley and he goes, Daisy Ridley, and everyone sat there and goes, was that a sign? I don't know. Is she his daughter? What's going on? Is she a Skywalker? Is she a Solo? What? Or is she a Kenobi? She's not a Kenobi. Is she any of these? So, there was that little quip of it. But Kathleen Kennedy quickly put a muzzle on him and sat there and said, listen, all kidding aside, this guy over here, Mr. Hamill, Mr. Skywalker himself, is a huge, huge part of this movie. So everyone sat there and like, yeah, Luke! Because, we figured that this is the Skywalker saga, and, the two main Skywalkers that were still around, were able to, were only in the movie 45 and the last 45 and the last 2 minutes of the first film in this new trilogy. So, Mark not saying any of this, but Kathleen finally saying, listen, I'm just going to tell you guys this, but this guy right here is the main part of this movie. So you might want to, take notice as to how he's acting and how he's, she didn't outright say any of this, but, she was kind of given that vibe of you might want to analyze Mark a little bit, these next couple days and during this panel and stuff, while we still have him on stage. So, there were a couple of things where we were just like, oh, okay, all right, we'll keep our eye on him. All right, fine. But, it was certainly something that, it was something to think about and something to keep in the back of your mind as the next part of the panel happened. And that was the full-on teaser trailer release of The Last Jedi. Now I'm not gonna do what a lot of people have been doing and like putting up pictures or putting up like putting over here pictures or the trailer itself and stopping it and starting it and stopping it, because if you're like me, you've seen it a whole bunch of times, and people who are listening to the podcast are not gonna really see this picture that's over my shoulder. So I'm just gonna really go over sort of the themes of um, sort of the themes of most of that. And the first major one, well, I mean, magnet. All right, fine. You want me to answer? Magnets work by different polarizing metals coming together, um, magnetizing from a north and the south pole. All that being from the north and south pole, having magnetic fields that differentiate with each other. Opposites attract. Opposites attract. So the first theme that I really kind of want to go over was Ray. Ray, it seems Ray looks like during this during this trailer, um, Ray has a Ray looks to be going through her intense training, and if you're sitting there, you're like, all right, this is the second film. In Attack of the Clones, Anakin was doing the same thing, and he was doing his training, but I mean, there was no like, there was no Rocky Four training sequence. Empire Strikes Back, Luke was training with Yoda, and we did see that in Dagobah with the running and the flips and the backpack and lifting and stuff like that. This we see Ray, doing what we seem training for that. And trailer opens up with what looks like a starry sky, but then as the light shines on it, it's stone, and Rey falls to the ground, and behind her you see a cave. And caves, for any Star Wars fan, they know that when Luke went through it in Dagobah, when Anakin went through it in the Clone Wars movies, they went through. Anytime a major character is training to be a Jedi and they have to go through a cave, it's meant for. Ezra went through it in Rebels. It's meant to be like their spirit walk or something. So it may seem like Rey is clearly training to be a Jedi. But then as the trailer goes on, you hear Luke's voice saying, "Breathe. Just breathe. Now, what do you see?" And then you hear Rey's voice saying, "Light, dark, balance." And could it be that Rey is finally meant to bring balance to the Force? I mean, that's why Anakin was trained. That's why Darth Vader became Darth Vader. Anakin was trained with the thought that he would be the balance to the Force, that he would bring balance to the good and the evil, which the Jedi felt as if that would mean wiping out all the Sith so that only the light side would be around. Well, that's not really balance, that's kind of counterbalance. In fact, it was still counterbalanced when there were thousands of Jedis, yet only two Sith Lords. So, now we're dealing with only one, maybe two Jedis, and then maybe only one or two guys that are going to the dark side, but are not necessarily Sith. In fact, Sith was never used in The Force Awakens. And I mean, it was never used in the original series, but it was used a lot um, in the prequels. But you know, could she bring balance to the Force? But there's also this thing where if she could see both, is she what they call a gray Jedi? Could she feel both sides and maybe be able to control the pain and the anger of being left by her parents on Jakku? Could she be able to channel that darkness, yet be able to control and feel the nature of the Jedi, the Force, the light, at the same time, and be sort of a gray Jedi, someone who can deal with both sides and bring that balance both within her but within the Force around her. We do see her swinging a lightsaber from afar, at what looks to be like a statue or a rock formation, and behind her you see Luke. In fact, if you look closely at the way she's swinging the lightsaber, it looks a lot like the way Luke was doing it in Empire Strikes Back when he went up against Darth Vader in the final sequence on Cloud City. So we do kind of see that. Now, when she says light, you see a camera zooming in to the back silhouette of General Leia, Carrie Fisher, staring at a map. And it looks very familiar. Oh, wait, they did that similar shot to Darth Vader looking, and Kylo Ren looking out the windows. Kylo Ren looking as Starkiller Base is destroying all the planets that the First Order wanted to destroy, and Darth Vader was looking at maps as, you know, they were going off to destroy or take care of something else. It was that same shot of coming up behind the character as they were looking at this. And then she says darkness, and you see a presumably smashed helmet of Kylo Ren's with glass and smoke coming out of it. Now, a lot of people are assuming it's Kylo Ren's. Maybe it's him smashing it in a flashback, or maybe it's him getting angry again and smashing it again. You know, we do know he has a temper from Force Awakens. Anytime someone gives him bad news, he just takes his lightsaber to a bunch of equipment. And then balance, we see a new image. An image that we really haven't seen that much of, except for in the prequels in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. And that's books. Now, Star Wars fans know what books are. I mean, there are plenty of books for the expanded universe. There are plenty of books in this new canon universe. So they know what books are. It's funny enough that none of the movies really have books in them, except for now. We see this bookshelf in presumably a tree. We don't know how big the books are. They look miniature. They look Yoda-sized. And then the next scene right after that, you see someone with a gloved hand wiping their finger over the former symbol of the Jedi, which we have not seen since the prequel and the Star Wars Clone Wars. So this symbol, clearly it seems as though the entity of the outer, not the outer, but the bigger vision of the Jedi and the Force seems to be at play here. So I'm really, really excited to see where this may go, and of course see where it may go with with what's her face, with Rey. Rey, we know, is very powerful, or she can be very powerful. Without any training whatsoever, she could get into the mind of Kylo Ren. And she was also able to pick up the lightsaber in the snow over that of Kylo Ren. So we do know that that Kylo Ren does play a key role, or that her powers are so strong, and this is going to play a key role into helping her decide what side of the Force she may want to be on. Now, she does have a lot of pain as well. She does have all the makings of becoming, part of the dark side of the Force. Her parents left her in Jakku when she was a girl. We do realize from the flashback she had when she touched Luke's lightsaber in Maz's castle that she does know who her parents are, and, does sort of know that she is, she is sort of, she is kind of conflicted in the fact that she wants to stay in Jakku to find her parents, but at the same time, she wants to, um, whatchamacallit, she wants to now know more about the Force. But what Daisy said at the panel before we saw this trailer and before we saw Rey doing all this training and hearing all of and feeling the Force and getting trained and being told to breathe, just breathe. She said that she will meet someone and it might not seem all that, it might not be exactly what you expect when you meet your hero. And she, you know, she's got a lot to deal with. And this cannot be easier for her to deal with. So, could Rey bring balance to the Force? Could Rey, be the one that this prophecy that Yoda and Mace Windu were so keen on in the prequels? Or could she just be the one who decides enough is enough? Now, throughout the rest of the trailer, we do see Poe and BB-8 running. There is a space battle, which we did not really see that much of in Force Awakens. We did see aerial fights dog fights within the planet of Maz and on Starkiller Base, but there was really no space battle. So now we're going to see that. And we do see Poe's ship gets destroyed. We do see a new planet called Crate that Rian Johnson it was unveiled during the trailer, and then during a later interview with ABC, Rian said that is the planet called Crate. It is a former mining planet, and it was a former location for a rebel base. So that means that the Resistance already has a one-up by knowing where this is, because they have the likes of General Leia and I'm sure Mon Mothma before she ultimately passed her torch onto General Leia. She she knew of this area. And in that scene, which was kind of like the salt desert that we see out in New Mexico and Las Vegas out west in the States, we see these skimmer ships that look like they're half made, like they look a little bit like from ships from the prequel, but they look run down, kind of like the pod racers from Episode 1. And that's where I think we saw the first connection to Rose, Kelly Marie Tran's character. We see these half-made ships, and in fact, one of the ships falls and kind of hits the ground hard, as if the pilot does not know how to keep it controlled. That's what kind of leads me to believe that these skimmer ships, which are going towards what seems to be like the First Order's version of AT-ATs or AT-ATs and AT-STs in the distance, because it looked a lot like that of Hoth, where you saw them in the distance on the horizon. So you see one of them hit the ground hard, and then they're bringing up this red dust. Now, we don't know if that's the minerals that can be mined there. We don't know if these are if it's smoke coming from the ships and they're being used as like a smoke screen ploy, or they're poisonous smoke that could eventually, harm and get into the atmosphere and harm any troopers. We're not too sure as to what they are just yet, because we only saw the two scenes where the ship falls and then they run across the desert with the red smoke coming up behind them. So it's very interesting to see all this stuff. And again, the ships look in such poor condition that it looks as if these are new inventions from this new character, Rose. And that is kind of her part in in this movie, is that she knows how to build, scrap kind of ships that will help the Resistance go up against the First Order in these newer conditions that maybe some of the Resistance don't know how to handle. So it's very interesting. That, or because the ships are being destroyed, like Poe's X-Wing was being destroyed, maybe these are the first ships that she could come up with in like a secret location or something like that. So there, those were some of the things. Finn, as I said before, we did see a very short clip of him in a in kind of like a medical unit, and he was asleep. So it looks like maybe that might be in the towards the beginning of the film, where he's still recovering from his injuries from The Force Awakens. It looked like maybe the modern version or an updated version of the Bacta tank that Luke was in, and that we saw Darth Vader in Rogue One. So there's a very quick glimpse of him. Another quick glimpse was Kylo. We saw Kylo Ren sans helmet, and we did see a smashed helmet when Rey was saying darkness. But we see him without the helmet, and he had a scar over his right right eye. But the scar did look a little small compared to that of what we saw in The Force Awakens when Rey slashed him with her lightsaber. So, and his eyes were kind of turning. Whether or not they were turning the same yellow that Anakin's and Palpatine's were, I don't know if it was that, or if it was just maybe the reflection of his crossguard in the lightsaber. But I did notice the bottom part of his eyes were starting to change that significant yellow that the Emperor, that Palpatine, and Anakin and Darth Maul all had to signify that they were one with the dark side. So I don't know if you saw that. I kind of picked it up. Again, it could just be a reflection of the crossguard because he was holding it close and he was kind of turning it over his eye. So the crossguard was starting here and then kind of went here. So it could have just been that, and I could just be over speculating. However, I saw it. I got to put it out there. We saw Captain Phasma in a scene walking with fire around her. It looked like she was in a hallway. Could be the same hallway that Poe was running down after the ship had been destroyed, or mostly taken out of service. Could be the similar thing as to what happened at the beginning of A New Hope when all the rebels were dead and Vader and the stormtroopers just walked down the hallway of destruction and all that kind of stuff. I think that's what they were trying to do with Phasma. Or it could just be another flashback with Phasma. However, we did find out later at the Marvel panel that Captain Phasma did escape the trash compactor, much like Luke, Han, and Leia did. And they're going to be coming out with a comic mini-series, and they'll explain that story. So that when you do see The Last Jedi, if you read the comics prior to the movie, you'll have a better understanding as to why Phasma got there. But yes, it seems as if she had no choice but to go into the trash compactor, and that's where she was going to live. So you did see her off in the distance coming through some flames with First Order stormtroopers. And there was that... there was a sort of a sense that whatever may happen, the First Order is going to get the upper hand at some point in this film. And it's going to be very pivotal. The hallway that Phasma was walking down does look a lot like the hallway that Poe and BB-8 were running down before they saw their X-Wing explode. So it looks as if there will be, a score for the First Order at some point in this movie, whether it's the end, the middle, the beginning, whatever it is, it is. Some notable absences were that of General Hux, who was very prominent. He was sort of the Grand Moff Tarkin to Darth Vader, that of Kylo Ren. So Hux and Kylo Ren were the same as Tarkin and Darth Vader. Hux was your military sort of force, who had the Supreme Leader's ear or the Emperor's ear and wanted to just, show with the, swing a big stick so that the people of the galaxy knew that the Empire was in full swing. Whereas Vader and Kylo are ones who believe more in the Force, and their faith in the Force will bring together a resolution, and thus bringing a a sense of power through faith over everyone. So there was no Hux, there was no Snoke. Supreme Leader Snoke was surprisingly missing. Actually, not so surprisingly, only because he wasn't in any. Only his voice was heard during the Force Awakens trailers and TV spots, but we didn't even get that. The only voices we heard were that of Luke and Rey's, or so you think, because there were also some other voices heard, but not so prominently. And that is every time when Rey answered Luke's question of what do you see, when she said lightness, you heard, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. When you saw the back of Leia, you heard Leia say, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. When you saw the helmet, you heard Obi-Wan, played by Ewan McGregor, saying, turn to the dark side. And then with the books, and with the Jedi symbol in the glove rubbing on the, looking like it's uncovering dust off of it. That's what it looked like. It sounded as if you heard Yoda say, surrounds us, binds us, all around us. So they were very faint. You have to turn your volume up, but make sure you turn it back down right after, or you pause it, or else you'll annoy your neighbors or your loved ones. But there were these three faint words uttered in this trailer, other than the two voices of Luke and Rey. So it's, again, it's much like during the scene where Rey touches Luke's lightsaber at Maz's castle. She has these dreams and she's going through these flashbacks, and you hear Ewan McGregor and Sir Alec McGuinness saying their lines, repeated lines from the original Star Wars movie and the prequel trilogy. It's what's not there that you need to listen to, and it's the absence of detail in some of these shots, that us viewers and us fans are paying attention to. And they do reveal a lot more as to the storyline. But one of the big reveals was the last line of the night, and of the trilogy, of the trailer, not the trilogy. And that was Luke saying, it's time for the Jedi to end. So when The Last Jedi was first announced as the subtitle for Star Wars Episode 8, we all went crazy, because Jedi is both the singular and the plural of the word Jedi. So when you have Luke Skywalker, he's a Jedi. But Yoda, Mace Windu, and Obi-Wan, they're all also Jedi. So it was very hard for, anyone who spoke English, for instance, to try to figure out who the Last Jedi is, or what the Last Jedi is, because it could have been singular or plural. Fortunately, when the title came out, when that first poster came out where it just says Star Wars: The Last Jedi, and there's space in the background, when the title came out in Germany, the way that they wrote it out in German, it was singular. So, you had that, and some of the fans were like, oh, so it's going to be singular, so it's got to be Luke, or it's got to be Rey, or it's got to be Leia, or it's got to be, maybe it's Kylo. Maybe Kylo and Rey switch, and Kylo comes back to the light side, and Rey goes to the dark side, or Luke becomes this Sith Emperor, and all this pain and stuff like that. So we don't know exactly who or what the Last Jedi is. And in that same ABC interview that Rian Johnson did, where he said, where he unveiled the name of the planet Crate, and he did say that in his mind, or he would agree with, if the Last Jedi meant a singular Jedi. He wouldn't say further if it was Luke Skywalker, like if it was one particular person that we've met or one particular person that we know. But he did just kind of hint to the fact that, yes, it does mean one singular thing. So prior to Luke's last line in this trailer, it's time for the Jedi to end. He says, breathe. Just breathe. Now, what do you see? I mean, truly, he's clearly talking to Rey. Rey is clearly going through her training. It's almost the same cadence and almost the same way Yoda told Luke to breathe as he's training on Dagobah with Yoda. So we do get the sense that now the Jedi has become the master, and he is now training his new Padawan the same way that he was trained in Dagobah. However, it seems as though Luke has been alone for a little too long. Luke is kind of a special case when it comes to the loneliness gang of wanting to meditate and be by himself. Obi-Wan and Yoda did it at the end of Revenge of the Sith to hide from Order 66. Obi-Wan went to Tatooine, so he wasn't really alone. He was looking over Luke as Aunt Beru, and Uncle Ben raised Luke. However, Yoda went all the way to Dagobah by himself and meditated. But Yoda was very keen, even though Yoda has felt a lot of hurt from other Jedis dying and Order 66 being released, and one of the strongest Jedi in the galaxy switching over to the dark side so easily, and all the pain, he was able to take that. But with all the meditating that he did, he was able to still find the light in the Jedi, and was able to still convince and still find the light and share that with Luke when Luke discovered him back on Dagobah. Now, Luke, on the other hand, has gone through a lot of Now, I don't know much about Yoda's trials and tribulations, especially in the canon universe, because I know he's gone through a lot in the expanded universe before Lucasfilm went to Disney and everything is now canon. But, hey, Malik. Malik. Luke is, no, I haven't. He's gone through a lot. He's seen his father kill many people before he knew it was his father. He found out that it was his father that was doing all this heinous stuff that he would hear on radio broadcasts. And, is there a way to really try to convey any of that pain? He watched his father die. He's with his, he finds out that he has a twin sister that, he was very close with. He's seen the full power of the dark side. He's dealt with the full power of the dark side, and thus wants to change that around and start over with what Yoda had begun all those years before, and start this new this new follow of Jedi. However, in his trainings, he loses the focus of one of his pupils, who also happens to be his nephew, Ben Solo, and it just turns, Ben Solo then becomes Kylo Ren, who joins the Knights of Ren and ultimately just goes goes ham on this Jedi temple that that Luke has built, and Luke is seeing destroyed in front of his face. And there is a part in the trailer where you do see Luke, or a hooded figure, fall to what appears to be their knees next to R2. And we did see in the flashback in The Force Awakens and in the trailers for The Force Awakens, the one scene where you see a hooded figure and the robot hand going on R2's face. And the robot hand, we presume, is Luke's, and we notice that it is Luke's hand because of when he goes off with the hood. Could that be Luke watching the temple burn? We do know that we're going to hear more of... See you later, Malik. We do know we're going to hear more or see more of the Knights of Ren. The backstory, and maybe see how Kylo Ren rose to his power and was found the First Order, and ultimately became the Darth Vader of the First Order. I mean, we know he was a Darth Vader sympathizer, so when he saw that the First Order was rising, you know that he wanted to just fill in his grandfather's footsteps. So seeing Luke watch a young pupil just come full force and become his own father before he was able to turn his father back, and thus returning him to the Jedi, he's had a lot of time to reflect. And by him saying it's time for the Jedi to end, to me, it sounds as if it is time for this whole good versus evil, this light versus dark, to end. This whole Jedi are good and Sith are bad it's ridiculous. In order to bring balance to the Force, everyone must be equal. The power of the Force is the power of the Force. There is no ups or downs. There is no yin and yang. There is no black and white. There just is. So, could Luke be the Last Jedi and try to adopt this whole new philosophy of new sort of bigger world? Because he tells Rey, or he says in the trailer, this is so much bigger, that it's bigger than good versus evil. It is a belief, it is a religion, and I think Rogue One sort of teased that with two of its main characters. The gentleman who kept saying, I am one with the Force and the Force is with me. I am one with the Force and the Force was with me. He was not a Jedi. He was just a believer in the Force and a believer in the Jedi. And Jeddah, which was halfly destroyed by the Empire when they tested their Death Star ray on Jeddah in Rogue One. Jeddah was a former temple of the Jedi, but has now grown to be a city of believers. So what if that thought process, that anyone can be a believer of the Force, even if they're not one with the Force, they can't feel the nature of the Force flowing through them, then why why can't there be just regular human believers? Thus making it seem like a bigger religion or a bigger entity than it has been, noticed as, as one side versus the other. So it's a very interesting take on it. Does it show that maybe Luke has been alone for, by himself for a little too long? Yeah, it does. And, I do understand that 100% because, you know, when you're by yourself and you see the things that you've seen and you've experienced the things that you experience, I too would be skeptic about it. But then I would also step back and say, well, maybe we've been coming at this all wrong. Maybe all this thousands of years of fighting and back and forth of good versus evil, um, you know, maybe it's wrong. And that's maybe where the books come in. That all these books show the origins of the Force and maybe where they went to, this is the Force. And then, sort of like God created Adam and Eve, in our religions, and they in turn created Cain and Abel, who then just represented good versus evil. Why do we need to have a good versus evil? Can't we just have you know, a being, a sort of source of everyone being together and believing in one thing and being happy, being with each other? Can we just have that? I mean, I know it's a lot to ask for us, but in this storyline where it's a bit more fixated on the Force, maybe we can see some sort of resolution. So it's very interesting to see Luke take this. Now, another whole thing could be Luke just, decided, it's easier to be bad. So we're gonna make him a Sith Lord. He's gonna be playing Rey the whole time. He'll train her to destroy Kylo, and then he'll train her to be evil. And then the whole third movie will be her just, cleaning house and returning to be a Jedi. Again, the subtitles for all these movies are not cryptic. So when it says The Last Jedi, it really does mean The Last Jedi. So, for, Empire Strikes Back literally meant the Empire is striking back and is going to win. Return of the Jedi, Darth Vader goes from the Sith and returns to be Anakin Skywalker, a Jedi. A New Hope, we finally meet the galaxy's next greatest thing in Luke Skywalker, and the team of Luke, Han, and Leia being the Rebel Alliance's New Hope. Like these titles are not cryptic. Force Awakens, Rey is, the Force within her literally wakes up. So, with this being The Last Jedi, we might have to show that Luke is the Last Jedi. Now, does that clear the argument? Does that solve the problem of Last Jedi being singular or plural? Not at all. Because he could be the Last Jedi, like the physical last guy who's a Jedi, or he could be the Last Jedi, which means that he is the last one who's considered a Jedi, in the plural sense. So, yeah. So, lot of mystery. This trailer, cinematically, there were some great shots in it. The space battle scenes were awesome. There was one scene that people have been tweeting about, and I think I retweeted a couple of them, because you see Rey's hand near rocks, and you see rocks rising. Her using the Force to levitate some of these pebbles. It looks exactly the same as Henry Cavill's fist in the snow in Man of Steel right before he takes off to fly. So, that is that is something that that is something that a lot of people really liked, was the shot of her. And it was actually one of my GIFs for promoting tonight's show, was her hand lifting the rocks as his hands were lifting the rocks too. Completely different things, both very beautiful shots. Man of Steel, maybe not one of my best movies, favorite movies, but this was really kind of cool. but I, you know, this teaser trailer really did show a lot more story and a lot more content as to where the story might be going than it did more visually stunning stuff. And again, it's the second movie, so it doesn't really need to show, the authenticity of this of it being practical versus CGI. It doesn't need to show off that kind of nature. It needs to show off what it's going to be about, because that right now is what's going to keep the fans engaged, and it did exactly that. So Rian Johnson, Kathleen Kennedy, the cast and crew of The Last Jedi, you got me, loving every second of that teaser trailer. But yeah, so all in all, that was a kind of a tidbit of how Star Wars Celebration went this weekend. We also received some other news, and I know I said it in my last show. I had said some good news that Carrie Fisher, General Leia, was going to be in Episode 9. Now, those were reports coming from her brother, Billy Fisher. However, this past weekend during Star Wars Celebration, Kathleen Kennedy has come out and officially said Carrie Fisher will not be in Episode 9. As much of a letdown as that is, I feel that might be the right thing. Having known nothing more than what everybody else does, fan-wise, I'm sort of happy, but I'm sort of sad that we won't be able to see Carrie Fisher in Episode 9. What are they going to do with her character? I don't know. What's going to happen to Leia? I have no idea. I don't want to speculate. I don't want to focus on that. Rather, right now, I'm focused on the bigger picture of The Last Jedi. And that's where my focus is going to pretty much stay until release and seeing it. So anytime a new trailer comes out, you'll know that I'll be here the next time I have a show, which is Sundays and Wednesdays, 9 p.m. Eastern. I will be here. That being said, I think I'm going to call it a night. Thank you for those who came in and tried to talk in chat. Thanks for asking completely different questions from the content that I was talking about. For those of you who are listening to the podcast, which will be posted sometime Monday, thanks for listening, and hopefully we could talk some more Star Wars. Leave some comments. You could tweet at me at the New Nerd N Town, not IN Town, just the letter N Town. For those of you watching the VODs on YouTube, check out the rest of the playlist. It's going to pop up right here. The little box is going to pop up here. Or you could just subscribe to my channel right there. Feel free to follow me on Twitter or on Twitch, twitch.tv/thenewnerdaintown. And again, follow me on Twitter. You'll see that I'm posting articles all the time, not just on Star Wars stuff, but on anything Marvel, DC, movie related mostly, and TV show related. Keep watching the TV shows that you like to watch. Keep watching the movies that you want to see. Take anything with a grain of salt. Take anything. Don't let life pass you by. Enjoy yourself. Truly enjoy yourself. Everybody have a great, wonderful rest of your Easter. For those of you who celebrate, for those of you who are celebrating Passover like myself and Chelsea, you've got 2 more days, and then you can eat all the bread you want. You can hide the Atkins diet for just 1 day. Eat all the bread you want. But just hold out for just 2 more days, 1 more night, and you'll be good to go. Have a great evening. Enjoy yourselves. I have to switch over. And good night. Bye.